Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Venture Visionaries podcast. I'm your host, Fred Schonenberg. On today's show, we have Will Gaviria. Will is the co-founder of Coactive AI, which is a groundbreaking startup. It's transforming the way organizations interact with unstructured visual data. With a robust background in electrical engineering from MIT and a PhD in material science from Northwestern University, Will brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. Coactive AI leverages advanced artificial intelligence to enable users to search, analyze, and gain insights from images and videos without the cumbersome need for extensive metadata tagging. Please join me in welcoming Will to the show. Will, it's so nice to have you.
Thanks for having me, Fred. Pleasure being here.
I first came to know Coactive as part of the Comcast AI Accelerator that we ran, and it is so incredible to see not only what you had all built from that point, but since then. And I would love if you could kind of share with the audience maybe the story of how Coactive AI started, and if there's any like specific problem that you were aiming to solve when you founded the company.
Yeah, no, thanks, Fred. And I want to say almost like the inception of the company really began even back when Cody and I, my co-founder, when we both met at MIT. So we both started off as computer science majors, right? We went to MIT from 2009 to 2013, and we got a front row seat to the big data revolution, right? We went from the early days of just like analyzing things, MapReduce comes out, and then eventually we have the entire ecosystem of things like Spark and Hadoop, right? And we got a front row seat to that when we were in undergrad. We then went on from 2013 to 2020 to really like dig super deep from both the enterprise perspective as well as the academic perspective. We both got our PhDs in the field. We got to work at best-in-class companies, and we really got to see how AI not just started, right, but actually got applied to solve real meaty problems, right? And the company, this is a fun story to share, but the company quite literally started because I moved out here in the middle of the pandemic. It was July of 2020. I needed someone to help me move a couch and a mattress upstairs, and I legally couldn't hire movers in California. So I called Cody at Stanford. He helps me move a couch. And we end up trading notes about, kind of like what we've been working on, things that we see. And, really the inception of the company was this idea that we're about to enter another data revolution, right? But this time it looks slightly different, right? This was back in 2020, and we say, hey, AI is finally here. We finally have these systems that can do reasoning and can do perception at scale, right? And we said, if we have that system and we have all this amount of unstructured data that people are collecting, like images and video, right? Essentially, we have the powder keg set up for what's going to be actually the next revolution. And this time, it wasn't just going to be a big data revolution. It was going to be a big data plus AI revolution about really unlocking the value of this company, of this companies unlocking the value of this data at scale. And we were very convinced that we were too young back then, but someone's going to build the next Snowflake. Someone's going to build the next Databricks, right? Someone's going to build that next piece of technology is going to define the next decade of technology improvements. And we said, hey, let's make sure that's us. And so that's quite literally kind of the inception story of Coactive.
I love it. You're gonna have to like hold on to that couch. It'll be in like the Smithsonian one day at like Future of Technology Museum. Here's the couch that caused the company to come together.
I hadn't thought about that one. Yeah, but I've seen it, but I still haven't.
So let me ask you this: why, obviously you all were getting exposed to a lot of amazing things, and you both have tremendous technical backgrounds. You guys focused on unlocking the value from unstructured visual data. What inspired you to decide to tackle that space?
Yeah, so it's a really great question, right? And I think it ultimately boils down to data is really at the heart of what really has driven a lot of innovation for the past 20 years, right? But what's really interesting is if you actually look at what the different types of data, right? We think of data analytics and we think of data analysis as kind of being more like closer to number crunching on tables, right? But that slice of data now only makes up about 5 to 10% of all the total data that we have, right? The remaining 90+%, right, actually turns out to mostly be in pixels, right? I mean, some of it is in text, but by volume, right, like 80+% of data today is things like images and things like video, right? And second, this data is very rich in information, right? We have the saying of, an image is worth 1,000 words, right? And it's very much true, right? And so you combine the fact that most data is actually captured visually today, and we have more and more of our world moving towards those experiences. Like, I mean, right now, like Fred, you and I are talking on this, right? We use social media and mostly focus on video and images, right? We do e-commerce and we're focusing more on those modalities. More and more of the world is shifting towards the visual domain, and yet, there weren't really many tools to unlock it at scale, right? And that's where we saw there was a really clear opportunity for disruption, because believe it or not, even today, most companies are still actually using manual processes to understand this data, right? And sure, 20 years ago, we didn't have the technology to do perception, reason, and scale, right? But we do today. And so the next 10 years or so, we were very sure we're going to be defined by who could unlock the bulk of this remaining data, right? And use it towards driving business forwards, right? Towards new product innovations and towards creating an entirely new generation of companies that don't exist yet, right? And so that really was why our focus was on images and video, mostly because the opportunity was just so massive and was just so almost just like vertical agnostic, right? Across the board, you just see image and video data being a crucial component of not just the data pipe, but really products and how we make decisions.
I love it. Is there a way you could give a use case or an example, and maybe more than one? So for the corporates that are listening, I would love like just a straight down the line, obvious one, maybe, thinking about content or somebody that creates a lot of video, and then maybe a way that a different type of company could utilize what you all do.
Yeah, so I'll actually give 3 examples that really kind of center around the core capabilities that we think are really what it means to unlock the value of this data, right? And just to give a quick summary, right, like the 3 things that we found across the board that kind of all enterprises are looking for, right, is number 1, they're just looking for a way to search and find what they're looking for within this content, right? So, they need a search solution. The second thing is they want to take all this content and they want to, apply labels, apply a tag, apply a metadata, whatever you want to call it, but you want to apply some sort of data extraction to that data based on how you see the world, right? And the last thing is a little bit subtle, but it's really deep. Like, people just want to use this data in the same way that they use all the other data they have today, right? You have tables, you have logs. These all get piped into applications. These all get piped into analytics, right? Like, why can't you treat images and video in the same way, right? And I can tell you why. There's a technology mismatch, right? We have pixel-based data that doesn't really fit into databases, right? Because they're not numerical or categorical attributes, right? And so if you can give a search solution, you can give people the ability to tag, you can give people the ability to treat that data as normal data, then all of a sudden this means that you can actually use it at the enterprise level, right? So those are the capabilities, right? But let's talk about specific use cases, because ultimately, you have to meet people where they're at, and you have to be, really solve an actual problem, right? Because capabilities are not solutions, right? And so in the search domain, right, one of the biggest ones that we see is people have content and they're using it to monetize something. So we have a customer, they're in the news and entertainment space, right? They have content that they license to their partners, right? But your ability to license that content is ultimately dictated by, can your partners find that content, right? And if you're relying on tags and annotations, then oftentimes they actually can't find the content even though you have it. If perception is reality, right? And then you actually end up not being able to monetize much of that content, right? And that's something where you can bring something like AI to understand the content, understand the user's intent, and do the matchmaking, which is a much more powerful way to approach the search solution as opposed to what we've been doing for the past 20 years, which is to get an image, tag it with everything you can think of, right? And then your search is limited by those tags, which ultimately, again, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so there's never enough. And second, there's just a practical limitation of how that system scales, right? As opposed to an AI system. And that's just search to begin with. There's a lot more that we can unpack, but yeah, Fred, I want to take a pause there.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I think it makes so much sense, right? And I've used over the years, when we've thought about creating, marketing materials or things like that, and there's all sorts of places you can buy stock imagery, right? Stock videos.
Exactly.
And obviously you've got the Canvas of the world now that are plugging into things like that. And it's always a little disappointing, right? Because I'm always like, innovation. And I type in innovation. I'm like, I want to see cool, new, innovative things. And it's like, here's a light bulb. And it's like, how many different light bulbs are you going to show me? Like, I need something different. And it's a very frustrating user experience. Of course, I could figure out how to articulate myself better and what I want. That would help. But it's very tangible to understand what you guys are doing.
And Fred, I love to add something to that, right? Because that's even like your external experience, right? As an external customer on a platform that is revenue generating, right? It is actually, that problem only gets worse when you're talking about internal experiences at things that may be seen as cost centers, right? So like, if you have an e-commerce platform, you have the .com, right? Sometimes the external experience is subpar, but then what the folks that are working internally and are producing content, are doing marketing materials, are working with social media channels, and they need to find the content. Oftentimes those systems just get very little love and care. So there's also a play here that's not just about revenue generation, but it's like, how do you make the workforce like more efficient, and how do you actually give them superpowers, right? Because that ultimately goes back to our mission, right? Of like, we started Coactive because we wanted humans and machines to work together, right? And we see that there's a lot of these things that are done manually that for folks that are really creative, and we want to give them the ability to get back to that creative work, right? And so I think this works both for a consumer external experience, but also internally about the things that you can be doing better to make sure your folks are actually finding that they're actually getting joy out of their work.
How does, you guys raised 30 million in May from my Google searching, but like prominent investors too, right? Graycroft, Andreessen, Bessemer, et cetera. What do you think it was about your value proposition that resonated in what is, a challenging market to raise money?
So it's a great question. And, I think I'll answer it in two ways. The first one is really about the trajectory of the company and their momentum, right? I think, we were able to raise a seed round based on the idea and based on us as the founders, right? We raised a Series A because of the amazing team and the amazing product we built to date, right? And we ultimately raised a Series B because we had a fire, and quite frankly, they wanted to pour gasoline on that fire to really kickstart and go all the way with the go-to-market strategy, right? So that's one perspective. So I always say investors ultimately put their money where their mouth is, right? And the vote here was the vote of confidence, and like there is a repeatable motion and there is a larger market here, right? And what that effectively means for us having raised and how we were able to do it is because the opportunity really is massive, right? Like, and so the simplest way I can explain it is, sometimes people ask is like, what's the end state goal? But I was like, the end state goal is at least 5 times the size of Snowflake and Databricks combined today, right? But let me unpack that for a second, because that sounds like a wild claim, but it actually is not, right? If you look at the companies that came out of the big data revolution, right? And let's just pick those two, Snowflake and Databricks, right? They do amazing things, right? But their scope today and what they built today on these multi-billion-dollar businesses is just on the opportunity of, can you analyze the things I have in structured tables, right? And the things I have in logs, right? And again, that only makes up about 5 to 10% of the data pie, right? So, and if you even look at the way they analyze and think about these things, bytes under management is even one of their metrics, right? So if you think about the remaining 90% of data, right, is at least like close to 8-9 times just more data, period, right? And not just more data, it's actually much richer data in context, in information, right? And things that you can extract and that you can use, right? And then ways that you can leverage it, especially when you combine it with generative AI, right? The market opportunity here, again, I go back to what I said earlier, is at least 5 times the size of Snowflake and Databricks combined, if not more, right? Because I know we just went through the data revolution, but we're just getting started. We finally have the systems that can do reasoning and perception at scale. 80% of the data landscape remains untouched, right? And that's the opportunity, right?
Yeah, I love the way you laid out the different, the seed stage, Series A, Series B, and why an investor continues to go and like, hey, we want to pour gasoline on this. There's a repeatable motion. Like that is it, right? Like that is when you get to that level, that is, hey, there's a business here and we think we can help it go faster. And you nailed the end game, right? Which is like, there's a gigantic market and you guys are very well positioned to go get it, which I love. Let me ask you this. So looking ahead, how do you envision your technology, your value prop impacting various industries, and where do you kind of see the business going?
So it's a really great question. And I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, right? So, those 3 capabilities I mentioned to you before, right? The ability to search, the ability to tag, but like in a customized way, and the ability to just treat all this data as though it were just the existing type of data that we have today, right? these are not vertical specific things, right? These are things that you can actually take across the board to different verticals, and they apply themselves in different ways, right? I gave you an example of search monetization in the context of content licensing, right?
Yeah.
That same example actually holds true for someone like a social media platform, right? And about finding engagement content, about virality, right? About discovering things and helping users find those experiences. The same thing is actually true in other settings, like for example, what are you doing like work within the healthcare sector, right? And you're actually trying to identify and either find records or do like more say you're in the research setting, you're actually trying to do like you have different images of cells being died and you're trying to find like similarity between them and trends, right? Like if you just look across the board, like visual data is really very much like dominating the data landscape and is really dominating the workflows that we have. And so, the opportunity for disruption here is if you look across the board, though, whenever you start working with this type of data, you see a bottleneck essentially based on people that are highly trained, do really creative work, doing very menial things like labeling, right, or maybe going through images. I mean, I remember when I was in my PhD program, we got this high throughput microscopes that could collect a lot of images, and we had grad students for hours going through some of those images, right? Folks that literally were getting their PhD, right? And that's not unique to the academic setting. And so, Fred, I think here the larger opportunity is how can we bring the solutions to different markets, and they will look slightly different, right? The search solution you have for an e-commerce site today, that looks different than the internal search solution that you have at a bank, that you have at a healthcare sector, right? But the underlying technology, the underlying capabilities is the same nonetheless, and in finding that match between the capability and the vertical specific solution and the needs there, that's the opportunity and that's the disruption that I think is just, again, it can be applied across almost, I think, the entire market.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about it as visual data, right? Like that's the unlock, and it applies to so much. So one of the questions I had for you, obviously, it was the focus of the Comcast program, and really almost everything Venture Fuel does on our side is like we try and think about how do you commercialize innovation, both as a startup or a big company, right? How do you bring those two together so that innovation happens faster and it's a business, right? There's commercial outcomes. I'm curious from your standpoint, when obviously you guys have multiple use cases, you're selling to big companies in different industries. For the founders that are listening, how do you navigate what I'll call corporate spaghetti, right? The big company wants to learn about, you said cool buzzwords, you said AI and visual data, come on in. And they tell you all sorts of nice stuff. And you as a CEO are like, hey, I've got to scale this thing. I raised all this money. All these investors are over my shoulder. Like, are we going to work together or not? What advice do you have for founder for trying to navigate that world?
No, this is a really great question, right? And even to go back to what I said earlier, right? Like our opportunity really was like massive, right? We had this horizontal technology we could apply to verticals, right? But we found very early is you have to focus, right? You have to have a tremendous level of focus because, again, people are not, people are looking for solutions today, right? Especially in the AI landscape that you have right now. Let's be honest, right? You have a tremendous amount of noise. There's a lot of companies that are being built. There's a lot of folks that are doing different things, right? And it's really hard to tell like what's real and what's not, right? Yeah. So the first thing is like you really have to focus and you have to meet folks where they're at. You have to bring them a solution that actually solves and drives business case forward, right? Like gone are the days where like you had just a random budget and explore AI. Last year was a lot about prototyping. We're now moving to real production use cases, right? And so that's something that we had actually that was very much a focus from our beginning. We started off with a lot of verticals, and more recently we've really been focusing on media entertainment, right? As a really very much a first class citizen, that I think really speaks to the NBCU kind of work that we've been doing with them. Retail is also a really big focus, and there's also social platforms as well that are a big one. But you have to have that focus to be able to meet each of those verticals and give them the solutions that they're looking for, right? Yeah. And to be more specific, those industries have their nuances, right? The way that NBCU thinks about their content, that they think about their world, the kind of way that they even see metadata, right? Even what they call it, they may even call it, some folks call it labels, some folks call it metadata, some folks call it tags, right? Like really learn that language, really understand what drives value for them, like not the capability, not the cool AI stuff, like what is it that they're trying to do that they cannot do today, right? And how can you go in there and you can really unlock that value for that customer, right?
Yeah.
And I want to say that the biggest thing is you can't have 100 of those journeys, right? It's really important to find that technology partner that's willing to go with you on that journey. Because the other thing that's I think sometimes it's missed is like it truly has to be a partnership, right? A lot of the folks right now that are building AI companies, I will say, I think you have half the puzzle, right? I think you have half the puzzle. You understand the technology, you understand what it can do, right? You have to now find a partner that's willing to essentially give you the other half of the puzzle, right? What are the problem cases? What is the ROI? How do you justify? How do you even meet them with an interface on what they're at, right? And the pitfall that I see a lot of people falling into is building these solutions, but only for the ML engineer, right? Only for the software AI software engineer, right? And the biggest thing is these are problems that they have across the entire organization. So if you choose to go that route, you're actually limiting yourself to the folks that have those ML engineers, those AI engineers, which, let's be real, they're very expensive resources not everyone has. And not just that, but like frankly, like why can't we build tools for everybody, right? That lifts everyone across the board in the organization. So I think my challenge is that. My challenge is focus, meet people where they're at, and think really clearly, not just about the value you're delivering, but to who you're delivering it with, and be very intentional on your product for that specific audience.
Will, where can people go to learn more about Coactive?
Highly recommend you check out our website, Coactive AI. We have some videos there that you can check out. You can see some use cases, samples. As always, reach out to us as well. We have a form there. Like, please submit your information, contact us. We love to learn. We're right now as we're in the journey. We're delivering some incredible amount of values, but always on the lookout for potential new customers, but also folks that are also on that partnership journey. That are looking for those folks that are not just doing cutting edge work, but want to work with them and want to give them that product that really anyone can use, right? Because the one thing I forgot to mention in this is like you can actually not just see what we can do, but you can actually get a sneak peek of the product, and you'll see that they're very human interfaces. Something that's very simple for anyone to use, because really, again, our big mission is to help humans and machines work together. And a big part of that is being very intentional about the human interface, right? Of how someone interacts with that AI. And you get a sneak peek of that on our site. So please check it out, and please reach out to us there I think it's right at the homepage. You'll learn more. Please send us your email. We love to connect with you.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that. You guys have done such a nice job of making something that is very technically robust and impressive, very easy to use for someone that does not have any experience in using AI tools or programming, right? Like it is very intuitive, it is easy, and that's one of the reasons why I think you have a big opportunity to scale.
No, thanks, Fred. We always say we got the PhDs for a reason, so you don't have to. So no PhD required. And in fact, we want everyone to be able to use it. So I something I didn't talk about here is I love to talk about all the tech that we have underneath the hood, right? But again, want to make sure we have an interface where really you don't have to have all that base knowledge just to be able to use the product. So plus one, Fred, and thank you.
Yeah, man, I love it. One of my favorite stories, we had a founder who I love, who's gone on to do amazing things, at a tremendous exit. But the first deck I saw them, it was 68 pages long, and the use case, the business use case, was on the back 2 pages. And I was like, hey, you should cut the first 66 pages. I was like, they believe your tech, right? You're gonna have to show somebody your tech, but like, what's the business case and how can someone use it? So you did a great job. Good to see you, Will. Thank you again for everything you guys are doing to spark change. And for everyone listening, go to coactive.ai. It's a great product and very, very cool. You guys will enjoy it. So thanks, Will.
Thanks, Fred. Appreciate it.